Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to this high-level public conference on implementing the European Green Deal and on the European climate law, which I know you're all waiting for and which is coming very soon. My name is Tim McPhee. I'm the European Commission spokesperson for climate action and energy, and I'm your MC for the day. So it will be my pleasure to introduce to you our great panels, our keynote speakers, who are going to talk to you about the climate law, about the Green Deal, and of course who are here to listen to you as well. This is an interactive event. We'll be taking questions from the floor throughout all the panels. And of course you have the coffee breaks, the lunch breaks, to get to know each other as well and to work together on the Green Deal. This is not a one-way conversation, a two-way conversation. You're here to build new relationships, new partnerships. This is something which we're all going to be working on together for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. We started a few minutes late. I think there was a bit of a bottleneck downstairs, and I know there have been a few problems on the public transport this morning, which means I don't have to talk, and I can straight away introduce you to our first speaker this morning. I'm sure all of you know him already, but I will introduce him, the Executive Vice President of the European Commission for the European Green Deal, Mr. Frans Timmermans. Frans, please.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to what I hope is going to be an exciting day. I'm certainly looking forward also to hearing the conclusions afterwards this afternoon, because we certainly can use all the help we can get. And if this is to be a success, it can only happen if it is inclusive, if you're all part of it, and if we can agree on the track to follow. I think you've followed us closely over the last couple of months. We promised to do a lot in the first 100 days of this commission. And part of that will be the introduction of the European climate law, so that we can enshrine into law our objective to become climate neutral by 2050. You've seen the presentation of the Green Deal communication. You've probably also followed the Green Deal investment plan and the just transition mechanism, which we introduced a couple of weeks ago. So we're not wasting any time. And by the way, a big thank you to everyone in the service of the Commission who has contributed to this. We're putting people under tremendous pressure, but we'll make sure that what we deliver continues to be of high quality. And I have to thank my colleagues for that. So today, we're here to listen to you, to hear your views on the next steps for the European Green Deal, which is the climate law. It has to be your Green Deal. It has to be our Green Deal. So consultation and debate will be and remain, not just today, but will remain essential. Now, let me just remind us of why this is so important. I think that the scientific evidence is clearer day by day how quickly and disastrously consequences of unconstrained climate change are affecting us. We're increasingly seeing warnings of risks turning into haunting manifestations of disaster across the globe. Just look at Australia. Wildfires have killed approximately 1 billion animals, 1 billion, so sort of double the population of the European Union. It's mind-boggling. I want to make clear that this is not me projecting Project Fear. We're just reporting on what's actually happening. It is urgent, it is essential, it is undeniable that we need to take action. The risks will only increase as the Earth gets hotter and our climate gets more disturbed. Climate is changing. We are in a crisis. We saw a record number of cyclones in the Indian Ocean last year, the wettest 12 months on record in the United States, the planet's hottest August on record, and it's happening close to our home. Last summer, temperature records were broken in European countries from Spain to Slovakia, with France recording its highest ever temperature of 45.9 degrees Celsius. In southern Germany, the June heat wave hit just after storms with heavy rain and flooded streets and cellars and forced the Munich airport to suspend its operations temporarily. Everyone in Spain is now very familiar with the phenomenon of gota fria, which used to happen on an average of once every 50 years and now seems to happen almost every year and even more than once. So in November, 9 people died as storm swept parts of France, Greece and Italy with flash floods, landslides and the collapse of an overpass. I can go on and on with this, but I think it is good to remind ourselves of this, but without giving in to paralysis because it's happening and we can't stop it. We can do something about this. This is the most important thing. And then the question is, what can we do as institutions, as individuals, as politicians, as business people, as scientists? What can we do? People are, when I do interviews, very often confronting me with a dilemma. So what is your choice? Do you choose to do something about climate, or do you choose for jobs? Do you have any idea what this costs? And I think it is our duty collectively to explain that choosing to do something against the climate crisis is choosing for jobs, for future jobs. And saying that choosing to invest in this is much smarter than not choosing and spending more money, not on investment, but on mitigating or on addressing the challenges, which is money that will be spent but does not bring any revenues. It's not an investment. So I think in our public communication we will have to concentrate on that, to detect the false contradictions and to help people understand that doing nothing does not mean that everything stays the same. That is the biggest trap in public communication, believing that by doing nothing everything will stay the same. By doing nothing the problem will get much worse. But on the other side, by acting we can actually tackle the problem, because this is, in my view today, the biggest challenge. It's increasingly no longer needed to fight climate deniers. I think climate deniers themselves by now have understood that they're on the wrong track and they're not very convincing. But I've seen already the first climate deniers moving to climate desperation, saying, you know, why? Let it be. It's too late. Let's live it out for a couple of years. Let's see what happens. And we saw some of that last week also in Davos, especially one speech of somebody who's 72 years old, who's a billionaire, and you know, the issue is that it's for his generation, it's not going to have severe consequences before the end of their natural lives. If they have a lot of money, they can move to places where they will be less affected by the consequences. But as a dad of both, of 2 children from that you can call millennials and 2 children that are part of Generation Z, I listen to those generations who are thinking about their future and who are thinking ahead and who are saying, we need to act because you're playing with our future. So I will not be cornered by people who say, because you point to the urgency, you're a pessimist and you're doom and gloom, you should be optimistic. No, I think there is no optimism in denying it. There's no optimism in saying we will all be okay by doing nothing, because people are too smart to buy that. They might buy it just like, you know, you sometimes drink too much to forget your sorrows. It is like a way of numbing your senses by listening to people who deny all of this. But it's like with alcohol, when sooner or later you wake up and you have a terrible headache and you have to confront reality. You know, you can't drown your problems in alcohol, even though people will continue to try and do it. And you can't drown these problems by denying them. They will come back even stronger. So in this context, what do we need to do? Well, there's so much we need to do, and there'll be ample opportunity to talk about everything we need to do. But my fundamental point is, we can do this. We have the science, we have the technology, we can certainly find the money. I mean, the Commission is talking about between, let's say, 260 and 300 billion euros yearly to invest in this, to make this transition happen. It sounds daunting, but if I was in Davos last week and I hear what people are talking about, the size of investment they're thinking about anyway, and even if you just look at the size of investment that's still being done in fossil fuels, if you reorient that, or at least part of that, into this direction, we can find the money. So I repeat, the technology, the science, the money is not the trouble. So why is it difficult? I think the essential issue is one of governance. How do you organize this? Like in any transition, especially a transition that is a dual or a triple even for Europe. We have the transition because of the climate crisis. Mother Earth is telling us, I can't go on like this, and I will let you feel it if you go on like this. We have an industrial revolution that is the first in human history that affects every being on this planet at the same time. Never happened before. And as Europeans, we also have a demographic challenge, combined with the other two challenges that changes Europe's position in the world. When my parents were born, Europe accounted for about 23, 24% of the world's population, Africa 5%. In a couple of years' time, it will be exactly the opposite. That has huge geopolitical consequences for us and for everyone. And these three challenges combined will dictate the policy choices we make. And I believe this is like in any other tectonic transformation humanity has gone through, is a challenge to everyone and to every institution. So if we deny, as political and public institutions, that we will have to adapt to this or become obsolete, we do help political forces across Europe and in the world who thrive on creating this feeling we are anti-establishment. And by the way, we know exactly which minority is responsible for our failure, and we will make sure that they will get the blame, and we will make sure that they will be isolated. So it is something we need to do, and we need to do it well. And if our premise is, and that's the premise I want to work on, that we leave no one behind, we need to organize it at all levels. Again, I repeat, by doing nothing does not mean nothing will happen. The Industrial Revolution will happen. Mother Earth will continue to tell us it's enough. If we do nothing, then we are no longer in control of either development. But if we act and get together, we can bring some control into this. And why is the climate law so important? The climate law, in my view, in simple words, is important because it will discipline everyone in this process, especially on the political side, to take the necessary steps to deliver on this promise of being climate neutral by 2050. And it will give the institutions that need to coordinate this also the legal possibility to act when those who make promises don't deliver on the promises. So it is an exercise in disciplining this transformational age. And I say this as a historian with a keen interest in studying earlier times of fundamental transformation, whether it's the introduction of coal as a basis of the economy, when we went from horses to steam engines, and then when we went from steam engines to combustion engines, and now we're going from combustion engines to other forms of energy. Transforming a society that is entirely based on carbon to a society that no longer needs carbon as a fundamental base, as a basis for its functioning, is of a tectonic nature. And this happens at a time when digitization is wreaking havoc in all sorts of structures. And if we do not understand that this is not just an economic change, this is not just a change in how we produce and live, this will affect every single institution upon which society is based and that helps function society. And if we do not understand that we have a collective responsibility in preparing all these institutions to handle this and to leave no one behind, to take everyone along, then we understand how epic this challenge is. And then we also understand that disciplining ourselves along this path to 2030, 2040, 2050 through a climate law is essential to make sure we deliver on this and to make sure that we can correct whenever this occurs. But, and now over to you, what do we put into a climate law? To what extent do we want to be prescriptive? How far will it go? Who are the subject of the climate law? Who can be held accountable if you have a climate law? These are all fundamental questions where I hope you can give us some guidance how we can best address this. Again, as a dad of millennials and Generation Z kids, I understand this is an epic challenge. It's also an incredible opportunity for Europe to lead. If we get this right, I can assure you that worldwide there will be huge interest in studying our idea for a climate law. I get questions about this, and I had it again last week, from all parts of the world. How are you going to do this? We'd like to see this. We'd like to be part of this. So it gives Europe, I think, a unique opportunity to lead, not just within Europe, but in the world. It gives, again speaking as a dad, new generations an ideal, again, generations that are no longer based on an ideological vision of the world, but are filled with ideals for the future of the world. It gives them an ideal to work on. The EU climate neutral in 2050 is an ideal people love to embrace. But people will be horribly disappointed if we do not start delivering soon concretely on what we do. And in that context, I hope the climate law can be extremely useful, and I hope we do a good job at the Commission to drafting a climate law that answers your requirements, that answers your hopes, and that answers your expectations of the years to come. Thank you very much. Good luck today.
Thank you very much, Executive Vice President